Hey guys, what's up? My name is Zach, and today I'm doing an election prediction video between Julian Castro, the former Secretary of Housing, I believe, under Barack Obama, versus Donald Trump, the current U.S. President. As you guys must know, it's been a while since I made a video, a few months, I believe, actually. And the reason for that is because in June, for most of June, I had quite a bit of Regents and AP exams to review for and study for, so that took up most of my time. And then I did try to make a video a few weeks ago, actually, this exact election prediction, Julian Castro versus Donald Trump. I made the entire video, it was like 13 minutes long, and when I listened back to it, there was all kinds of issues with audio, like it just lowered my pitch, like in my voice, just randomly and sporadically throughout the video. They didn't cut out entire parts, just every kind of problem that you think could go wrong with audio just occurred in that video. So I had to scrap it. I was kind of angry about that since I made a 13-minute long video and I couldn't post it. So now I'm going to do this election prediction video a few weeks later. I ran through a few audio checks and it seems fine to me. Hopefully it just won't bug out on me out of nowhere. But we'll see. So this won't just be an election prediction video. I also want to discuss at the end of the video why I think Julian Castro is indeed the best Democratic contender, or potential Democratic contender, in the 2020 election. And that may surprise some people, but when you hear my reasoning, hopefully you'll understand. So let's start it off. It's just the same, for the most part, the same safe states. A number of things have changed in between now and when I made my last election prediction video. Donald Trump's approval rating nationally has been in flux, mostly just because of the Korean negotiations, which did give him a boost nationally, but then he kind of stagnated later on, mostly because of the child separation issue, which is probably one of the largest problems he's faced approval-wise in his presidency thus far. So he's kind of just stagnated back to the point he's been at for most of his presidency in these past few months. Indiana would be safe as a result of Mike Pence. But there are a few states that have changed on a statewide basis, approval-wise, for Donald Trump, and I'll speak on that when I go by state. So Julian Castro, just a few things about him. He is Latino. He served under Barack Obama as Secretary of Housing. He was a potential vice presidential nominee for Hillary Clinton, but she didn't nominate him. In my opinion, it would have been a very smart choice. She would have had a very good hold on the Latino vote, which she did not have at all. But instead, she chose to nominate Tim Kaine, which I think was a very, very poor choice on her part. But I won't discuss that. So, all right, I'll save why I think he's the best candidate for the end of the video. I'll just go state by state. So, Nevada. I'm going to switch to a different shading before I continue, obviously. So, Nevada. I think that Nevada would be likely. If it's any other Democratic candidate, I would probably say it's a lean. This state has been slightly tilting towards Trump so far, but I'd still call it for the Democrats in general. But Castro is Latino, and with a Latino on the ticket, he would definitely be able to drive out that turnout in a state like Nevada, making it likely for him. And in case you're not sure on what the shading represents, I did clarify it in my last election prediction video, so you can just go watch that if you want to. I don't feel like explaining it again. So New Mexico would be solid blue, for the same reason with Nevada, except that there's much more Latino people here, and this state is already likely Democrat regardless, so it would be solid for him. Colorado I'll come back to. The Rust Belt is tricky, mostly just because of changes on a state-by-state basis, which I discussed earlier. I'll get to that in a second. I'm going to go through easier states first. Virginia would be likely for Castro, I'd say. There's not a tremendous Latino population here, so it would be likely. I'm kind of on the fence between likely and solid, but I'm gonna say likely. Texas, obviously. So the interesting thing about Castro is that he is a Texan native. He was the mayor of San Antonio, I believe San Antonio. He's been spoken about for a potential candidate for mayor of Texas, for not mayor of Texas, a governor of Texas, a candidate for Texas Senate. His name has been thrown out there, and I believe that would be a smart choice for him, either governor or Senate in the future, because he does do very well here in Texas. So I am on the fence between doing it as a lean to Trump or likely to Trump. I would not think that this state would be Democratic this earlier on, even if it's a candidate like Castro. But I'm gonna say lean. I'm gonna say lean Trump just because of Castro's background as a Latino, as a Texan native, as a mayor of San Antonio. I would say lean Trump. I believe that if it was Castro's best case scenario, he could take Texas come 2020 if he was the candidate. And as for Colorado, I'd say it's likely. If not, solid blue. I believe the only reason why it's likely and not solid, same case with Virginia actually, is because of Trump's overall boost in approval numbers. Not boost nationally, boost statewide, which is why I would characterize these as likely. Same with New Hampshire. New Hampshire has shown a slight drift, a slow and steady drift towards the Democratic side in general recently, ever since the 2016 election, arguably. And I don't believe it's likely for Trump to take New Hampshire in 2020 unless it's a truly bad candidate like Elizabeth Warren. I believe I did give New Hampshire to Trump in the Elizabeth Warren prediction. I'm not too sure. But Castro, I don't believe would be a bad candidate at all. I believe that he could hold New Hampshire against a candidate like Donald Trump. Maine's 2, I would give to Castro. But as for Maine's 2nd, I would say it is a lean towards Trump. That's a very tricky call to make because it's a single congressional district. There's no truly reliable polling data, especially since it swings so suddenly every single. It went to Trump. It went to Obama in 2012, I believe, by margin of 20, definitely by double digits, maybe not 20 points, but double digits, I'm certain of. Then come 2016, it swung all the way to Trump by 30 or 40 points, I believe. It was a very big blowout for him and a surprising one. So the 2nd district, I would say lean Trump, just because of history. Okay, I guess I should go to the Rust Belt at this point. Minnesota, I would say solid, just because Minnesota has a very strong Latino population, and with a strong candidate like Castro, I believe he can boost the numbers, and I believe it's more than likely that this state will go to him. If it went to Hillary Clinton, regardless of the margin it went to, I believe it would go to Castro come 2020. Michigan, however, I'm going to say likely. Trump's numbers in this state have boosted, not significantly, but they have boosted, and it is noticeable. So I'm going to call that state as likely not for Trump, likely for Castro, not solid. That's a decent change from my last prediction videos. This state used to be pretty much in most of the candidates' columns. And as for Wisconsin, that also has had a very sudden change in approval for Trump. If this was any other Democratic candidate, I'd probably call it as just a lean in their column. But since it is Castro, and I do believe he is a solid candidate, and combined with that Latino appeal, I believe it would go likely for Castro. But as for Iowa, I believe the only candidate that can make this state competitive at this point would be a Bernie Sanders type candidate who has good and I forgot, Nebraska's 2nd has to be empty as well. I need to get to that too. But as for Iowa, I believe it's likely. I believe the only candidate to make it truly competitive is a Bernie Sanders type candidate who has good grassroots appeal, or not grassroots appeal, but a good grassroots campaigning strategy, I believe, is key to winning a state like Iowa. And as for Nebraska's 2nd, I would call it as a lean towards Trump. I believe that Castro could take in his best scenario. It's kind of hard to characterize this race completely since, like I said, it's just Omaha. It's just a single congressional district. Pennsylvania, the same reasoning as for the rest of the Rust Belt. It's pretty solid in Castro's column, if not solid blue. This state has had a very sudden shift, not a sudden shift, it's an obvious shift in the Democratic column since the 2016 election. So I'm hesitating to make it solid, but I'm not going to do that since it is a swing state, so I'm going to call it likely. Okay, so this gives Castro, or Julian Castro, the victory in this hypothetical situation, making him the hypothetical next president of the United States. North Carolina, I used to call leaning blue. I used to think it was up for grabs for many Democratic candidates, but I don't think it is. I don't think it is any longer. I think that Trump has made a pretty good comeback in this state with his approval. The main reason why I was down in the first place was because of the tax bill, which negatively affected many residents in this state. But I'm gonna call it as lean. I'm gonna call it as lean just because Castro is a very good candidate combined with his Latino appeal. There aren't many Latinos in North Carolina, or not a very big Latino population in North Carolina. But regardless, combined with Trump's approval in this state, I call it as a lean. As for Georgia, however, that's just likely. I don't see Georgia going anywhere to the Democratic column until like 1 or 2 election cycles down. However, this state is shifting very quickly, and which is why I'm giving it a likely and not a solid red to Trump. Okay, now Arizona and Florida, I think, are the last 2 states that I think I'm going to call, because Ohio is going to be a lean. If it's any other Democrat, I'd call it as likely to Trump. Trump has a pretty good hold on Ohio. Say what you will about him on approval, he has pretty consistently held Ohio. He just has good appeal to the voters here, in this state particularly, and that's improved pretty well in these past few months, so I'd call it as a lean to Trump. Arizona, I'm going to call as a lean to Castro. So hear me out here. I'm going to cover this more once I explain why I believe Castro would be the best candidate. I hope this video isn't too long either. I feel like I've been droning on for a pretty long time on this video, but whatever. It's as long as it will be, I guess. So Arizona has a very high Latino population, one of the highest in the United States. There's also been a very strong and sudden shift away from the Republican Party and towards the Democrats. So that, combined with Trump's low approval ratings in this state, which is below 50%, combined with a strong candidate like Castro, who was also Latino, I believe that this state would be lean blue, just based on that logic, and I believe that's pretty sound logic. And same for Florida, except Florida has an even larger Latino population, I believe, so I'd call it as a lean to Castro for that reason. And my argument here whenever giving it to one of my arguments whenever giving the state to a Democratic candidate in my election predictions has always been the gun protests and the gun legislation protests occurring since the shootings here. And people might just shrug that off as though it's nothing, but it really isn't. That's gonna be a very strong campaign mechanism or still is. It still currently is in 2018 midterms. And it may not be that exact shooting may not be brought up tremendously come 2020, but the effect in general on the protests, on the youth movement here, will see the state have a slight push in the Democratic direction. It already has been. It's already been seen. So this is my election prediction. So let me take like a minute to discuss why I believe Castro is the best Democratic candidate in 2020. Sorry, that's just my chair. It's very old and rickety. So I always compare Castro to Barack Obama. Barack Obama was not very well known when he came on the scene in 2008. He was he had only served a short time as Illinois' senator, and not many people knew him. That race was characterized as to be Hillary Clinton's time as the Democratic candidate, but he came out of nowhere. He energized the base with his charisma, with his African-American appeal, and I believe Castro is very much the same. If you watch his speeches, he is very comparable to Barack Obama. He's like I always refer to him as a Latino Barack Obama, which he kind of is. He's got great charisma. He's got great approval across the United States, especially amongst Latinos. And if we see the same shift in African-American voters in the 2008 election and even 2012 election as we saw with Barack Obama, and we saw that same shift with Latino voters in 2020 to Castro, this won't just be what the map looks like. This will be even better for Castro. He could take states like Texas, even Ohio. if that same shift is seen, which I think it very well could be if he's the candidate. Alright, so that's the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and understood my logic when calling these states and when characterizing Castro as good a candidate as I believe he is. If you have any thoughts on the video, I'd love to hear them. I'm very happy to be back on this channel. I hope to be posting more regularly now. Alright, yeah, thanks guys. See ya.